Welcome back, parents. My name is Julian Walker. I'm the CEO and founder of the EPEC curriculum, the Encouraging Parent Engagement curriculum. We want to just tell you thank you for joining us again for another week's coaching seminar. We see a lot of progress that you're making with your children as athletes and then developmentally as well. We harp on these developmental domains because the Department of Head Start harps on these developmental domains, and your teachers and your administrators at your school are doing their job so that these children perform at a typically developing rate. And so that's why we focus on these domains, to let you know what you should be looking for out there on the field of play. And also with any other activity that we're doing, know that everything has a underlying reason. And the only reason that is to develop our children's developmental domains, the 7 that we're dealing with. So today, for the first part of our segment, we're going to talk about discipline and what that looks like, what the proper discipline is out there on the field, and also in your homes, and also in the classroom. And then also the 2 domains that we're going to focus on today are the physical domain and the mathematics domain. So let's just get started, okay? So discipline. First things first with discipline, we must know that we cannot bring our own issues to the field. The easiest thing to do is to discipline out of emotion. What that looks like is someone does something wrong, you get mad. They do something disrespectful, you get mad, and you lash out of emotion. In the EPEC curriculum, we do not discipline out of emotion. We discipline out of principle. I'll show you exactly what that means and how to do that a little bit later on. But as a precursor, we don't bring anything to the field. So if something happens at work, if you and your spouse are not getting along, if something tragic happens, we have to leave everything in the car. Once we get out of the car, we have to be 100% invested in the kids, invested in the development of the kids and the maturation of the kids. So please make that a mental note. Leave everything that you have before you get there. Do not bring anything with you. And that's really the first step for anything when you're dealing with discipline, especially young children. You have to understand that if you discipline out of emotion, they can perceive emotion, but they don't really know what that is. They have never been taught what that is. So they don't really know how to feel and react towards your emotion, if that makes sense. So understand that we can't bring the emotion, we can't discipline out of emotion. Okay, so the true goals of discipline, there's 4 main goals we want to focus on. First goal of discipline is protect your child from any danger. The reason why we discipline our children is to stop a behavior and kind of reflect that behavior and twist it and turn it and transition that behavior in a way that's a positive, nurturing behavior. And if they're doing something wrong, we don't necessarily want them to do that thing again. Therefore, that thing is not helpful for them, and we want them to get out of the actions and the nature of doing that certain thing. So that's the first goal. Second goal is it helps learn self-control and self-discipline for the children. This gears back to last week's seminar when we were talking about social emotional skills. With discipline, if they can harness those emotions, they can harness those feelings, that though knowing the right from wrong, that helps us a lot in the social emotional domain when dealing with Head Start children. Next is your child develops a sense of responsibility. If they know they are held responsible, they're held to a standard, they will perform at that standard if that standard is really required of them. And the last one is it instills values. And what this means is basically it gives them a sense of morals. It gives them a sense of what, like I said earlier, right and wrong. And that's important to start developing now so that you can build that nature, you can build that tradition, that habit now, and they can carry them on through the rest of their lives. So the way that we accomplish these 4 goals is very simple. We lay out the rules of engagement right now. And what that means is if I administer the football camp, the football season, and I didn't give you a set rule, I didn't give you any instructions, any guidance on what we were doing, we would be on several different pages. One team would be doing it this way, another school would be doing it another way. And so setting those rules up front and letting them know what the rules are is very important when you're dealing with discipline, because with that, you also have to set the consequences of breaking those rules. Now, what this looks like is this. If we're talking about the rules of football, this means, okay, you cannot step out of bounds, otherwise the play is dead. You cannot move before the ball is snapped, otherwise there's a 5-yard penalty enforced, whether you're offensive defense or defense. You can't do anything unsportsmanlike, otherwise there's a 15-yard penalty because you did something unsportsmanlike. In the household, we get this confused a little bit, and tradition says that parents usually take this from being disciplined and being rule setting and establishing what the expectations are, and you can get into a threatening mode. Okay, and so there's really a fine line between threatening and between setting expectations and letting them know the consequences for failing to reach those expectations. So in the household, let's say they were supposed to clean their room, and you tell them you're saying you're wanting to establish that habit, that ritual, and you go to them and say, hey, if you don't clean your room, I'm going to give you a spanking. That is not how. That is a threat. That is not. You're not establishing the consequence. You're not establishing the expectation. You're basically invoking fear in them, and that's not how we want to operate when we're dealing with our children on the football field and at home. And so that same scenario can be thrown in several different ways. It could be, hey, listen, I want you to clean your room. I need you to clean your room when you get up. If you clean your room, then you can watch TV for an extra 5 minutes. If you don't clean your room, then I'm going to have to, we're not going to watch TV tonight. We're going to ask you, we're going to go to bed early. Not a threat, not threatening, not a whole lot of emotions. It's simple expectations. When you set the expectations, when they don't follow the expectation, then you can basically just draw out and go with whatever discipline that you establish right then. That prevents you from disciplining out of emotion. And if that makes sense to you, then great, because that is the number one step in being a really efficient and effective coach. Okay, so another example, another scenario, we do not want to, let's start like this. The reason that we want to discipline out of principle instead of emotion is simply this. It prevents us, and it puts a barrier on us to not allow us to invoke our emotions on the child. So what does this do? Disciplining out of principle instead of disciplining out of emotion really sets the precedent for not allowing the child to have a stretched perception of what's going on. It prevents the child from perceiving the discipline in the wrong way. Emotions are unregulated, and they often can be left up to interpretation. What that means is, if I mean something in one way and I'm emotional about it, you could perceive it in 10 different ways. Okay, perception is always reality, especially when you're dealing with children. Even in adults, perception is reality. If I think you said something wrong, but you really didn't mean it in a wrongful way, but in my mind you said it wrong, then in my heart I'm going to believe that you said it wrong. And I will hold on to that until I get clarity of what's going on. And even when I get clarity, I might not say anything, or I might not change my perception of what happened. Therefore, if we act out the preset rules, we decrease the chances of the children perceiving the emotion or perceiving the discipline in a wrong fashion, because that's absolutely what we don't want them to do. We don't want them to be afraid of you. We don't want them to dislike you. We don't want them to have any anxiousness towards you. We want them to be in a cohesive unit with you. We want them to want to come to practice, to want to play, want to participate, because that's how we develop them throughout the maturation and matriculation through this process. This is all for the children. But with that, the children are going to give you some challenges. And as coaches, as parents, as teachers, you're going to have to work through those challenges to achieve your common goal. And the common goal for this is to help Head Start teachers and help Head Start administration create normal developing children and school-ready children. And we play a huge part, especially with something so big as the football season, or when we move into soccer or gymnastics or anything like that. Those are the big focal points of these children's week. And most of the time, it's the big focal point of their parents' week. So they want to see their children out there having fun. The children want to be out there having fun. They talk about it all day in the classroom. They talk about it all weekend when they get with their friends. They talk about it all night with their parents. So if this is something that it is extremely exciting for them, and it's something that they really want to do. We do not want to take the love out of the game by disciplining out of emotion. That's why it's important that we discipline out of principle. So through the discipline sector, we're going to get into the developmental domains that we need to reach for today's lesson. First is the physical domain. Now, this is one of the biggest domains that the EPEC program focuses on, because we have found an anomaly in the numbers across the country. Physical fine motor scores, and I explained to you what they are through the roof, higher than they ever were before. And which is awesome. And once I explain what it means and what they are, then you kind of understand where I'm coming from. But our physical gross motor scores across the country are not very good at all. They're down from previous years, and the scores are pretty depressing and disappointing, because we are showing through the numbers, through the data, that we're not developing our kids in the right way. And that's what EPEC stresses, is that we want to develop these children the right way. So the physical domain refers to physical well-being, the use of body, muscle control, appropriate nutrition, exercise, hygiene, and safety practices. Okay. Now, earlier I explained a little bit about physical fine motor. Physical fine motor is a control of small muscle groups, okay? So digits, and using these digits in purposes like writing, self-care, hygiene things, building, exploring, anything touching, as far as writing a pen or playing on a tablet, playing video games, something like a board game or something like that. Those skills are through the roof, and we want to continue to develop those skills. But the next section, our physical gross motor, that's the section that we really get to focus on, especially if we're in the football season. Because when I was at the football camp, I was interested to see how many children could throw the ball with one hand and run in a straight line and go through some of the drills without falling down. And so physical gross motor is the control of large muscle groups, large muscle movement, navigation, and balance. So basically matriculating through different functions, running, jumping, skipping, standing on one foot, throwing a ball, catching a ball, running in the correct direction. Those are the kind of things that physical gross motor focuses on. And so when you're out there with your children, understand that that's something that we need to be cognizant of, and see how these children are maturing and developing through that domain, because that's going to be one of the most obvious domains, along with social emotional, that you're going to see as a coach, because they're going to show it to you every time they step onto the field. So please be cognizant of that with all the children, and especially your child. Please know what your child can do right now, and then note what they are able to do at the end of the season. And that's kind of a benchmark to kind of show if you did a really good job, or if we have some room for improvement for the next go around. So now we're into the next domain, which is the mathematics. And the mathematics refers to the conceptual understanding of numbers, their relationship, combinations, and operations. So this is not just 2 + 2 = 4, especially with what we're doing with the EPEC program and playing sports and getting parents involved. It's a lot of different mathematical domain opportunities in what we're doing. So, for example, running plays. Running plays is a pattern. Okay, so you have to know where you line up in conjunction with the ball. Okay, you have to know when to go off of the cadence. You have to know what the cadence sounds like. You have to know your number differences from the two side to the even side, rather, to the odd side. So the even side of the field is the right side, and then the odd side is the left side. Understanding concepts. If I grab his flag, then he is down. So conceptual things, reasoning, measurements. I need to get 10 yards to get a touchdown. That means I don't need to let anybody touch me from now until the time that I can get 10 yards. If somebody touches me or grabs my flag, then I'm down. So classification patterns, measurement, reasoning, these kind of things are extremely important and are extremely opportunistic when we're dealing with the EPEC program, because each of these children are going to be dealing with these synaptic nerves firing through the mathematical domain, and we must be able to help them nurture that. So giving them different plays, naming a play one word, naming it tiger, and that means a sweep to the right, versus naming one of them lion, which is a sweep to the left. And then the R for tiger, and tiger means that you're going to the right. The L in lion means that you're going to the left. So different pattern things in what you're doing with the foot. You can make you can develop them in a lot of ways, and you can nurture that development in a lot of different ways just outside of what we give you. So we want to make you cognizant of that domain and how that domain works, so that you can use that in day-to-day operations when you're dealing with your children and administering the coaching for the football season. So this wraps up our week 3 coaching seminar. We have one more week to go as far as our coaching seminar goes. And we really, once again, we want to thank you for being involved. Thank you for wanting to help your children and wanting to develop your children and develop the other children in Head Start. We want you to have an awesome day, awesome practices, and awesome games.